there's no question the White House has been feeling the pressure from these rising gas prices at the pump. To what extent does 50 million barrels actually create a dent in keeping those prices lower in a sustained manner?
Thanks, Akiko. Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's actually a very political move by the Biden administration to bring down domestic prices, which is actually sort of against IEA rules. But, they clearly felt the pressure that this needs to be addressed first. Now, the amount of oil that's actually going to be added is a little bit unclear because it's not quite clear how much of each two tranches will be released, how fast. However, what it will do, it will flip a slightly undersupplied oil market at the moment into oversupply initially. So that was probably what the Biden administration hoped for. But as you saw, crude oil prices have still increased because the expectation of the market is that now the oil producers led by OPEC and Russia, so the group called OPEC Plus, might just decide not to add barrels into the market as they have so far promised they would do. And that is what the market is expecting. And hence the price impact has actually been the opposite of what probably the US administration was hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, Henning, you've pointed that out on your note. There's a bit of a push and pull that's happening between the U.S. and now this group of countries they've decided to coordinate this release with, and then OPEC Plus as well. I mean, how much of this was really about forcing OPEC's hand, and how much of that are we seeing backfire right now if you look at the price moves?
I mean, to be fair, by just talking about the potential of an SPR release, that has brought crude oil prices down by about 10% over the last month or so. So in some ways, you could say that the threat of SPR release has already had the desired impact. It's brought down crude oil prices quite significantly. But it does seem like Biden seems to think that crude oil prices above $80 per barrel are not acceptable in the current conditions. And that's why he wants to send the message. It's just as much a political message as well to tell America's people, to tell politicians in America that the Biden administration is doing something to combat inflation. And that's why also they wanted to bring some international partners on board. But that is very notional. I mean, India's release of 5 million barrels is very notional. And so far, we have very little details of the other partners. So it's mostly about the US.
Yeah, Henning, you alluded there to the rules of what the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is all about. And really, it's meant to be tapped when you have supply issues, right? Unexpected short-term disruptions around the production of oil. This seems to be more politically led. We've heard the Biden administration talking about gas prices and inflation issues for a while now. I mean, what is maybe the precedent that a move like this sets when it comes to how a president deals with not, supply issues rather, but pricing?
It's a good point to make, thank you, because it sets a bad precedent is what it does, because it politicizes oil markets not really for a strong reason. I mean, oil prices at $80 is high, but it's not unprecedentedly high. Interestingly, over in Europe, there's been very little talk about too high oil prices. They're worried about natural gas and electricity prices more. But the issue here is that, as you say, the IEA rules, of which the US are a member, states that the strategic release, the release of strategic petroleum reserves is not to be done to influence prices. So it's a breach of their own rules. And of course, that means that it's going to be harder in future for IEA members, for oil consumers, to accuse OPEC of price influencing if the IEA has misused their own strategic reserves for the same reason. And in the longer term, what this could do is it pits big producers, OPEC, and sort of an anti-OPEC club of the big consumers against each other. And normally, when markets become so politicized, it just it's a push and shove, and prices become volatile. And at the end, nobody really is served by this. And we shouldn't forget also that, of course, the US oil industry might not fully agree with what's been going on as well. So it's not just about OPEC.
And Henning, we've seen the Biden administration try to toe this very delicate line between calling for additional production to bring down at least a temporary pullback in prices, while also saying long term fossil fuels should not be the future. I wonder how you think the administration tries to manage this messaging, especially when they put climate right at the center of their domestic policy.
Yeah, thanks, Akiko. That's a good point, because what's happening is there's a misalignment, not just in the US, it's in Beijing and in Brussels, it's pretty much everywhere. The long-term urge to do something to combat climate change, to decarbonize the world's industry, it doesn't really gel well with the short-term priority to ensure affordable and reliable energy supply, whether it's oil or natural gas or just electricity. Those differing short-term and long-term priorities don't fit well together, and a lot of governments around the world are struggling to get them both under one hat, and that is a real problem at the moment. And this SPR release is one little aspect of it, which currently dominates US headlines there and abroad as well.
Henning Gloystein, it's good to talk to you today. Appreciate the insight. Eurasia Director of Energy, Climate, and Resources, joining us from London today.